Hello, this is Catherine Ivy. We are looking down on Wrangell, which is where I live. It is a tiny town, a little less than 2,000 people on an island in southeast Alaska. And I wanted to talk about building a new market garden in this area. My partner Tyler and I recently bought property and we got started this year. So I wanted to do an overview of what we've done so far. But because I don't have any video from that time period, I'm just going to show a series of pictures. And in later videos, I'll provide more detail. Before we moved to Alaska, we lived in Port Townsend, Washington. And this is a picture of me weeding a pretty sad looking patch of spinach. This is Froghill Farm, where they had a work trade program, and I did that for a couple of seasons. And normally they had a lot of really nice produce, and I learned a lot at this farm. I also worked at the Port Townsend Food Co-op for a number of years in the produce department. I really wanted some hands-on training because my goal was to have a small market garden of my own. In the summer of 2009, we got on our boat and headed up the Inside Passage to Alaska with most of our belongings. My partner is a shipwright machinist, and he rebuilt this 1920s trawler. We ended up living on this boat for a lot of years. Our plan was to eventually buy property. Because we were landless, I got involved in putting together a community garden in Wrangell. That's a picture of me in the red shirt on the left. And I grew some things in a couple of beds there for a number of years. But by 2013, I was pretty much freaking out that I hadn't gotten my own property and farm going. So a really nice lady named Christine Jenkins let me use a vacant area of her property to grow a garden. And I did that for the 2013 and 2014 season. And then I was also able to sell some things at the community market, which was something that I was also involved in developing. There's a fellow named Dan Trejo who lives in town who was selling organically grown produce out of his step-side van. That's him sticking his head out of the door there. He was shipping the produce up from the lower 48 on the barge because neither of the two groceries at the stores at the time were selling much in the way of organic produce. I started helping him in 2011. We would switch off weeks, and then after a year or so, I was doing it every week. I decided to open a storefront selling both organic produce and groceries. It's a little tiny place. I did that in 2013, and then the plan was to do that part-time, and when my partner and I bought property, to farm part-time and sell my stuff in the store. But what happened was it got really busy and became more than a full-time job. So by the end of 2017, I had decided, for that and other reasons, to pass on the store. In the fall of 2015, we finally bought property. This is the little house that we built that's still not completely finished. The property is a little less than 3 acres, but most of it is heavily wooded and or really wet. So there's only a small area that's really decent for gardening. And of course, our first focus had to be not on the garden, but on getting ourselves a place to live. This is the space that we had cleared for this year. This picture was taken in April 2018, and you can see that there's still snow on the ground. This whole area is actually relatively dry, but it is muskeg, so not the best for planting indirectly. So the previous year we had had soil brought in from elsewhere on the island, and you can see this small space underneath the snow where that's at. The potential here is for a 1/4 acre market garden. I had had surgery in February 2018, so I was really gimping along still here. And Tyler suggested, though, that I just get something planted, mostly for morale purposes. So we got things going, and we're late getting things started, but at least we did get things growing. And I would like to say that I have been bootstrapping this thing all by myself, but if it wasn't for Tyler and the equipment that he has as part of his business, and his skills, then we wouldn't have gotten anything much going this year. The gravel pad allowed the equipment to get out there and rip stumps up and put the soil in. The soil area is about 20 feet by 50 feet, and the gravel pad is about the same size. I had thought about putting raised beds there, but I've decided to do something different in the future. That greenhouse is 10 feet by 20 feet, and it's just a wood frame, and we put clear shrink wrap on the top, which is really durable. The only downside is that it does condense on the inside. On one hand, I've got a door, which is supposed to be just temporary, but I never did replace that. And then on the other end, there's a window. There's an arm in it that opens up when it gets hot and it vents the greenhouse. We brought in a pile of sand and soil from on the island and then shipped up some compost from the lower 48. And that stuff actually didn't turn out to be very good, but it's all I had because I hadn't had a chance to make my own compost. So then took some of that and some peat moss and some limes, a little bit of fertilizer, and made some starter soil. And I used the bigger cells because I didn't know how long it was going to be before the garden bed actually was ready and that I could plant out starts. I actually started my sugar snap peas as starts because I didn't know when the garden bed would be ready. And I did that and some chard and also some kale. I got everything planted out, and as you can see, there's the Agribon Row cover pulled aside. I need that for a number of reasons. First of all, root maggot can be a problem. And also, when I was at the community garden, there was a pack of ravens that used to come down and raise hell, and they would just rip out little plant starts. Just they weren't eating it; they just rip them out, and they just lay there and wilt away. So the Agribon cover keeps them from doing that. And then in this area, there's a bunch of deer that come through, and if you have cover on, then they won't nose under and try and eat the plants. I mean, they'll still walk through and cause some damage, but they won't eat all the plants. And we needed to get some fencing up. We put in some fence posts and threw up this deer fence. I really like this black mesh stuff because you can stand back from it and see right through it pretty much, and so it doesn't disrupt the view. If you can see by the wheelbarrow there, there's mama deer and baby deer, and they can't step through my garden anymore because the fencing's up. You know, it seems like what they mostly eat is skunk cabbage. You hear them chomping down there in the woods, and it kind of makes sense that where the bear can find them and eat them like popcorn. These are my basil starts, and I was waiting to get the bed put into the greenhouse so that I could transplant those. There's some empty areas there. You can see where we were going to put some tie rods to hold the bed together, and we did that, and I was able to fill in the soil and then fill that in with some additional starts. I'd had a chance to compost some seaweed, and I put that as a top dressing on top of the basil bed and also out on the kale and the chard. Here's the kale. It's not looking super healthy, but it's a lot better than it was before I put the seaweed on there. I was able to sell some things this year at my old store, which is now called Twisted Root Market. Here's some sugar snap peas, and I was also able to sell some basil here at the store, but also to an Asian restaurant in town, which was pretty cool. The plan for next season is to take that gravel pad area and spread it out and then put soil on top of that so that I have double the area that I had this season. And then just to continue to take down trees and clear land and make compost. I'd like in future videos to show you the composting bins in the area that I've cleared for raspberries and provide additional detail about what's going on here. I'd like to thank Poxtiano Dirt Frog. He's a fellow who has a YouTube channel where he's just started uploading some videos, and he suggested that I do the same for my market garden in its initial stages. And I thought, well, I don't really have much going on right now, but it might be kind of fun to document how this all got started.